Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce, and in tonight's Einstein Analytics video, we're going to be jumping into spoilers for the Spring 20 release. So I've brushed the dust off my GS0 pre-release org after obviously forgetting and resetting my password as I do every 4 months when I go to do these videos again. I've screwed up my intro a couple of times, so now we're ready to jump right in. I did want to give a quick shout out to Gilda and Komal for helping me to find some of these spoilers in particular, as well as always, thanks to our friends at Salesforce for putting all of this together. So the first new feature I want to draw attention to is under the replication settings. We now have the ability directly from the replication layer to actually toggle whether sharing inheritance is on or off. Now, in previous releases, this is controlled first as an org-wide setting to turn this on and off, and then this is controlled on a per dataset level, and we declare which object that is coming from. So I don't understand at this point if this is going to represent a change to how sharing inheritance is governed overall. So this is something we're going to have to wait for the release notes on. I also do not have insights into whether or not the row limitations on sharing inheritance are going to be raised or not. So at this point, I guess all I'm saying is there's a new option in a drop down, and it looks something like this. And we've got some buttons here. So yeah, sorry, you get what you get. The next feature I wanted to cover is going to be under the connected data options. So now we have some shiny new tabs here. We can see that the connections that I have are my SFTC local, which is going to be my replication layer. I do have a connection to Google Analytics as well, but we now have a tab for MuleSoft connections. So what's cool about this is if you have MuleSoft or if you're going to be getting MuleSoft, this is finally going to provide a really elegant, easy to use, hopefully easy to use, method to integrate on-prem database information from the following repositories that you can see right here. Traditionally, on-prem tends to be one of the trickier spots to get data out of. Usually we end up using middleware or dataset utils or the good old-fashioned swivel chair integration, which is great for POCs, but don't take that live into production. But now we are going to have some MuleSoft-based offerings. This is some of this integration cloud that we've been hearing so much about. We also have live connections, and if I switch over to that and I click add a connection, I see absolutely nothing. So I don't really know what we're going to be seeing here yet. Release notes aren't out, and I haven't really heard anything about it. I just found a button. So this next feature was actually in pilot for the Winter 20 release and appears to have either gone beta or hopefully GA. So let's walk through this one. You've done it. You're living the dream. You have successfully convinced all your coworkers that there's a mission critical dashboard that they need to go check out immediately, and you've embedded a GIF into it, and this is what they find. Now, we've had this ability since actually the dawn of analytics. It's always supported animated GIFs. But what it is not supported up until now is a way to actually tell that one coworker who's been living under a rock for the last 15 years and doesn't know what they're looking at right now, what a Rickroll is. So now we have this learn button here. Now, previously, we could only link to YouTube. But now in the new release, we can actually link to any URL whatsoever. So in this case, we're going to go to the Wikipedia page on what Rickrolling actually is. And this is right in app. So we can move it around, we can resize it. And in a practical scenario, you might want to actually link this to documentation telling your users what they're looking at on the dashboard, perhaps a data dictionary, maybe something in your SharePoint or whatever your repository is. So really useful feature from the team here. So next up, we're over at the Lens editor to check out the updates over there. It wouldn't be a new release for Einstein Analytics if we didn't have some UI changes here. We now have just a slightly different organization and aesthetic for our groupings and for our measures as well. This might just seem like a reskin, but there is actually net new here in that we now have the ability to see the API names of fields within our data sets. I could see how as a builder I would definitely want this, especially when you end up with like multiple different fields that are really just the same thing. So that's a lot of times that's pretty useful. I don't know how this is going to resonate with business users, but since I'm not a business user, I'm going to have to wait to see what they tell me. The measures did also change as well, and now we have the add formula button here. So we don't even have to switch to a compare table to get this functionality. It will pop over and make give you this compare table look while you're editing it. but once you hit update, you're going to be back in the chart mode for that. So another difference is that the undo and redo buttons did get grayed out versions. So now when we go back as far as we possibly can, undo is going to be grayed out. Looks like they don't have the icon for redo yet, or maybe it's there's just a bug there, but it does actually work. We can undo and redo right there. Dataset fields has also been moved. It no longer shows just the word fields right here. We now have a drop down where we can show the fields panel. So really just a reorganization update there. So the next updates that we are seeing are on the dashboard editor, and it is in the form of a search properties feature. So now within my widget, I can just search for example, map, so that I don't have to scroll and try to figure out where the map type is. The UI is a little misaligned on this. I'm guessing it's because of the new search functionality. Not really a big deal. They always manage to clean that sort of stuff up. But I'll tell you, the number one thing that I can never find is going to be themes. So this is going to save me a lot of time because I never managed to figure out where that guy is. Another thing we're seeing is a brand new button. And you know me, I love brand new buttons. And it's the same brand new button that we're also seeing down here. And that's going to take us to the advanced editor. So classic problem that we've had from the beginning that we've always addressed with bindings. These two charts right here are actually coming off of different data sets. So this guy is coming off my DTC opportunity data set. And this guy over here is coming off of my more DTC data set. Now, I know that these are the exact same data sets because I just used a very simple data flow to clone it, but analytics has no idea that these columns have any common meaning whatsoever. Now, we've been able to use a feature called connected data sources to connect these data sets without having to use bindings at the query level for quite some time now. It's an amazing feature, but in order for that to work, both of these charts would have to be referencing the same field that we are connecting. So for example, I can't just tell it, oh, this stage over here somehow correlates to these states over here. You're not going to get any faceting that way. So before we get into this, I need to take a step back and address something that I see in the analytics on my channel, and that is a noticeable drop in audience retention anytime I show the code editor. I understand where you're coming from. I didn't always know how to write code. I, for a long time, assumed I would never be able to figure it out, and I was entirely wrong. So this feature actually seeks to not only bridge the gap between clicks and coders, but also to simplify the process of making very minimal coding updates for those who are not largely familiar with it. So normally if I hit Control E and I open up even a simple dashboard, I'm going to see thousands of lines of code. I'm not necessarily going to know where my binding goes, and this feature seeks to address that. So I'm by default, I'm looking at my widget information right here. So this is JSON associated with the chart being on the screen. Over under the query section, we see this error that I just ignore, and it's going to tell us, well, I'm getting count of rows, I'm grouping it by stage, and then I've got this filter that I added when no one was looking because my example won't work very well without it. I'm filtering by billing state or province equals New York. So now this is where I want to put my binding in. I actually want this to filter down to New York instead of me having to write the binding myself. I want the system to do it for me. So I'm going to start by saying, well, where do I want to get this information from for my interaction? So I'm going to select my query. And I know that it's the billing state and province _1, but in case I had a lot of steps on my dashboard, maybe I would click this preview button to have a look and see what's being projected into that step. So now that I've selected that one, now I need to choose what data I want to return from that. So in this case, I'm going to want a column, and the column that I want is billing state and province. And again, we have the ability to preview our data. It's the same view as before, but without the little eye bulb icon. And if I go back, I want to choose selection. Now, the main difference between selection and result has to do with what the behavior is when a user selects nothing. But in this instance, we want we only want to pass over what the user is clicking on. So now if I did go to result, I would see that this is what's currently being output by this step. Now, if I pass this array in as a string, it's not exactly going to be what I want. So I'm going to go down to more options, and instead of as string, I'm going to choose as object. Now we also have the ability to set a default value, so if nothing comes through on that binding, instead of it breaking, we can pass something else in, and this is going to add our coalesce function. Additionally, we have a pencil over here where we can edit the interaction. This is going to let us make manual modifications to this binding. We also have the ability to add all of these different functions. Coalesce, for example, is your best friend. And I've used all of these except for slice. And not that slice isn't cool, I just haven't had a use for it yet. But like concat, flatten, and join are super, super cool. So anyway, once I've configured my binding the way I want it, I go ahead and I hit the easy button, copy interaction. That's going to copy it to my clipboard to get this little confirmation up at the top. And then basically, I'm just going to drop this where the previous thing was. Going to paste that guy in there. And it's smart enough to know to add the curlies, but it did not add quotes for me. I'm kind of okay with that. I don't mind having to add quotation marks. Fingers crossed. Let's see if it actually worked. So I go ahead and hit save. Ignore that error again. View my dashboard. And let's see. Does it know I'm in Texas? It doesn't seem to know I'm in Texas. Yep, I'm an idiot. We were talking about selections and results, and I totally forgot to hit selection instead. So a quick JSON edit later, and I did manage to get this guy working. Alright guys, so it is now the next day. I was going to upload this video last night, but as I started to shift over from record to edit mode, I realized I had missed several really awesome features that I didn't want to upload the video without including. So let's jump into those at this time. So the first we're going to talk about is called data blending. In order to be able to use this feature, you're going to need to turn it on under analytics settings in setup. Once you've done this, it's going to allow you to include up to 4 different data sets in a query in the UI, clicks not code. Now this feature is still pretty buggy, so there's some things that I'm not able to get to work correctly, for example, removing data sets or adding calculated columns based off of formulas, but my assumption is that these features will be ready by the time the release gets to production, but it's a net new asset. You got to give them a little bit of time. So what's really cool about this is it actually identifies one of the most core use cases why you would need to use either SQL or really complex data modeling in your data flow. And that's for doing something as simple as getting a calculation across 2 different data sets. I have a data set of my opportunities and I have a data set that represents the quota targets that I need to hit. And I want a simple bar graph that tells me across my reps what is my current percentage to goal in the current quarter. Previously, we could not do this without code. So let's jump in and see how it works. So right off the bat, I noticed that I have this add dataset button up here. So right now we're looking at DTC opportunities. If I click add dataset, I'm going to be able to add my more DTC opportunities. Now note, we're looking at count of rows on DTC, not more DTC. So I would need to add that as a second measure. Presumably we're going to be able to do calculations across that by going here and clicking add formula, but right now I'm not able to get that to work. I'm assuming it's just a low-level bug that they're going to have resolved pretty soon. Similarly, if I attempt to remove data sets, I also get an error that is currently being worked on. Now, once we start adding groupings, we're going to need to pick a group that's from both data sets. It doesn't actually have to be a common column. It's just that the behavior for what you're going to see in your grouping is going to depend on what values are found in each. So right off the bat, I see, oh, we've got stages for both. I can get stages off of both. But if I was to choose something for my second data set like industry, I'm going to notice that everything's going to drop off the right-hand side. The reason why is because I've got stages on the left and I've got, let's see here. Did I just do that wrong? I think I might have just done that wrong. So I got stages on the left, industry on the right. So I see I've got plenty of stages, but since none of those industries align to these stages, I'm not going to see any values. Now this is not something that we can't fix without using this UI. So right up here we see that this is a left blend. This means that our grouping values are coming from the data set that's being loaded first, and anything that's not in one of those groupings is just not going to show up. So if we switch that, we did have some nice Venn diagrams here last night. I'm assuming that they're going to be back at some point relatively soon. If we select right blend, the reverse is going to happen. Now I would expect that we see all of our industries and none of our stages. Now this one should produce no results found because it's only going to show values that exist in both groups, and that's an inner join. Nothing found as expected. And let's see, if we go to outer, I would expect to have values from both lists. And there we go. So a lot of cool stuff that we can do with this. We can add on additional groupings beyond this. So that first one was still being called stage. Let's add state to this as well. We can add state. So now we got state by stage. I wonder if I can actually drag this up to the top. Let's see. Does drag still work? Yeah, that's pretty cool. So maybe if we switch this guy over to a stack bar. If it sounds like I'm making this up as I go along, it's because I am. Just a little behind the scenes of the process here at Let's Play Salesforce. A lot of times with new release coverage, I'm learning along with you. So they say a great way to learn is by teaching. It's absolutely true. So now we have a stack where it's all the different states. So it looks like that definitely works. The other thing I wanted to point out, where I was trying to create just a bunch of additional groupings in order to show this, if we hop over into the query mode, for one thing, we do see that this is generating all of the SQL code for us. But another thing that I'm observing is that it does kind of run off of the side here. So we notice that this query actually continues for a good chunk before kicking over to the next line. I'm guessing this might be because of the introduction of dataset fields in the previous release, but I'm not sure because I haven't tested it against a different org. But to resolve this issue, just a quick control minus plus seems to do the trick. We see that it pushed the rest of this missing query, which was like about this much of it that was getting cut off, back down to where it was supposed to be. So we can still switch back to chart mode, and since we didn't edit our SQL at all, we can still edit things through the UI. So again, the condition under which add datasets is going to disappear appears to be as soon as we start adding groupings. Up until that point, we can continue to add additional datasets. And I think that the reasoning for that is that you can add up to 4 datasets here, and if you didn't add 4 groupings right here, it's going to break the pre-existing code. So I think that's the reason for this restriction. So just bear that in mind. You want to make sure the first thing that you do before you start building out these complex queries is to add all of the different data sets that you're going to be using for them. All right, this next feature is pretty cool, but one thing to be aware of is that it does not work if you just go to create query and do this from the editor here, even though it kind of looks like it should. I'm not entirely sure if the reasoning behind it. I kind of think you just need to put it on the dashboard first. Maybe that's the reason why. But once you do have a chart on the dashboard, the new feature that we have is the ability to set a reference line dynamically from another query, clicks not code. And if you're a fan of my Bindings Basics series, you might notice that this is one of the ones that's got a broken syntax in it due to the fact that it's a 2.5-year-old video and the product has grown in that time. So, you know, for anybody who comments on that video, now I'm just going to link you to the release notes. So we're going to go ahead and find reference lines. And this search thing right here, I didn't think it was going to be a big deal until I immediately started using the heck out of it. It's really great. It is like the dark horse gem of the release where I was just like, really? Oh, okay, that's nifty. And now it's like my favorite thing. But we're going to go ahead and click add a reference line. So I've got this number widget up here, which is just the number of closed won opportunities that I have. And I want to put that as a dynamic reference line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the value, and then I'm going to click this new button right here. And I'm just going to go back in case I did that a little bit too fast for you guys. So REF to search for my reference lines. And then right here, let's see, can we get it to actually, there we go. Choose a value for the reference line based on an existing query. So I'm going to click that button there. I'm going to select my query, and that's going to be my all_1. I did see that eye bulb there, so I'm guessing that's a preview. I'm going to do this one more time. I'm guessing, yeah, if I click on this and I select my query, if I hit this eyeball, my expectation is I should see a preview of it. Yep, and there it is. There's my 364 count of rows with no grouping whatsoever. I'm going to select this guy. My reference line value is going to be the count of rows measure, and then for results or selection, well, I want results. I'm not sure the use case for selection. I would probably always want result on this one. I don't know. I'm going to have to wait and see what comes up in the field. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply, and we see it moves to 364. Very nice, very nice, very nice. So then we additionally have the ability to do that for the label as well. I don't have anything that I can show you as an example for that right now, but the use case for this would be if you wanted to say which state had the most sales in a given industry, you would have an industry drop down, and then you would grab the output of state and you would pick whatever the first value is for that. So pretty cool feature there. So for anybody who's referenced my dynamic reference line video, which I believe is part 5 of Binding Basics, and observed that the syntax is broken. There is somebody in the comments who posted the updated syntax for it, but now you don't need it. Another step in the path to a code-free analytics environment. And while I do think that we will one day get to the point where it's almost no code, I really hope it doesn't go completely code, because then where am I going to have fun? Anyway, let's move on. All right, this last feature for tonight, I'm not going to lie, I have no idea how it works, and we're going to see if we can figure it out together. And just to save you the time, I'm going to post on the screen right now whether or not I was able to get it functional. But we're going to go through this as we go. So it's called Watchlists, and according to the setting and setup that I have to turn on, Watchlists allow us to curate and track how metrics change over time. And before you enable this setting, you should click this link that currently just goes to a placeholder bit of documentation and doesn't actually tell me how to do the thing yet. But apparently it's a big enough deal that we've got a big yellow box for it. So I'm interested to see where this is going to go. So now I've enabled the feature, and if I go to my analytics homepage, watch real close, the expected change, and this part I did test out, created by me is going to hop over to the middle, shared by me is going to disappear, and watch list is going to show up right here. So let's see if that actually happens. Well, bam. So now we got created by me in the middle, and we have watch list over on the right. And apparently we can add metrics from dashboards so that we can track how they change over time. So in order to do this, I feel like I'm going to need to get some metrics to change. So in preparation of that, what I've done is I've created a simple data flow that's going to take that DTC opportunity data set, that get more DTC opportunity data sets, and it's going to append them together to, I cringe to say this, we're going to create duplicate rows. Okay, just trust me. Sometimes, for the sake of science, it is necessary to create duplicate rows. So now we're going to hop back to Analytics Studio. I'm going to create a blank dashboard. And I really don't know how this is going to work, but I'm just going to grab the more DTC opportunity data set, which is what that's going to be registered as, and I'm going to create a simple KPI widget off of this guy. So to do that, I'm just going to grab a number, I'm going to put it here, I'm going to move it here, and I'm going to go ahead and save my dashboard as fingers crossed. My fingers crossed KPI. I hope I don't end up with duplicate rows, even though that's deliberately what I'm trying to do. I don't see any options here to really mess with this. Nothing on here that tells me what to do. Nothing up here that really tells me what to do. So then my next logical move is to go into view mode, see if I've got anything on the drop down here. Oh, okay. When I looked at this before, I didn't see it. So now let's try that. Now we've got it added to our watch list. So So now we go ahead and hit save. I'm smashing the save button. Nothing seems to be happening. Oh, it just took a minute. Oh, no, there's some lag. There's a whole lot of save that just happened there. And yes, this is totally my first run through this recording. So now we're going to hit the run data flow button, go to our data monitor, stay calm, and spam the refresh button. So I'm excited. If we go back to Analytics Studio, do I have to reload for it to propagate? Oh, it did a thing? I don't know what happened here. It did not like that whatsoever. So yeah, I'm gonna have to wait and see, but I'm pretty sure I'm the one that broke that. And while I was able to get my org functioning normally again, I wasn't able to get it working with watch lists. So I've decided instead to go back to my regular Let's Play demo org, and now I'm going to go up to the URL, and where it says home, I'm going to type Astro, and I'm going to go to my happy place. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, and as always, swim in safe harbors. Thanks for watching, and try to beat my high score, which is actually not that hard because I've only got up to like the mid-30s. I'm actually terrible at this. Yep, case in point.